Recording started. Welcome everybody to the March 2019 edition of DNN Hangout, where we have a whole bunch of guests lined up over the next coming months. We have like 7 or 8, so we're about to get back into a regular rhythm. Thank you for watching. We have a slightly different format that we're going to be toying with, so feel free to leave comments, give us suggestions. Let us know what you like, don't like, and we'll take your feedback as it comes. All right, so welcome, Mr. Ralph. Welcome back. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. Good.
Yeah. So Ralph installed DNN today, so that was pretty cool.
On my new computer, my new work computer. Yes. I did.
Yeah. We won't talk about some of the challenges that you ran into, but it may or may not have been smooth.
It was fairly smooth. Fairly.
Yeah. It was. Let's say it was NV quicker than it could have been.
It was NV quicker. Yes.
Awesome. So with our new format here, we're going to jump right into introducing our guest this month. And this month it's Mr. Matt Rutledge. If you're in the DNN ecosystem, hopefully you've heard of him already. But Matt, he's a speaker in the DNN ecosystem at this point. He's I believe it's CTO. Is that right, Matt? CTO at the Believe Group. He does. They maintain a site called Believe Kids. I'll let him talk about that later, or I'll ask him about it later. He's also a DNN MVP, if you haven't noticed, and he's a member of the Technology Ecosystem Advisory Group with DNN. Are you part of any other groups or is that just the only one?
Also the Developers Advisory Group. Developer
Advisory Group. So Matt does a few things for us. Let's just say. Yeah, so, jumping into this a little bit, we have a bunch of questions for you. And I know Ralph has tons and tons and tons of questions, but I'm going to try to, ask questions as well. Yeah, so as far as yourself, one of the things that we want to do with the, DNN Hangout is get to know people in the ecosystem. And Ralph and I have talked about ourselves in previous iterations. I'm the founder of Upendo Ventures, upendoventures.com, where we provide various types of online services. And Mr. Ralph, what do you do, sir?
I am the UX UI engineer at OneHope, and basically rebuilding their intranet with Vue.js. And so I'm in charge of doing all of the UX and design and front end, kind of heading up the front end part of that. And also do DNN consulting, theme development type of thing with Ralph Williams Consulting.
So it would be ralphwilliamsconsulting.com.
Yep. As long as my website's that way again.
ralphwilliams.com.
ralphwilliams.com. Yeah, but it's kind of down right now. You know how that goes.
Well, we'll see what happens by the time this goes live. And if somebody wanted to learn more about OneHope, how do they get in touch with that?
They can check out onehope.net, and
Yeah, we'll put up those links in the show notes as well as everything else we talk about. And Mr. Matt Rutledge, there's the Believe Group and Believe Kids. Can you please tell us more about who the Believe Group is and Believe Kids and what the difference is, if any?
Yeah, so the Believe Group is a sort of the parent company, a conglomerate. We own, at this moment, 3 companies. Believe Kids, Custom Pro, and Spirit Gear Direct. Our 2 main focuses really are Believe Kids and Spirit Gear Direct. Both those focus around fundraising for schools and groups. Sort of on the Believe Kids side, we sell, all the traditional sort of products, candy bars, Jelly Belly, candles, catalog, all that stuff. You have kids coming around the door with the catalog, it's probably Believe Kids. And then Spirit Gear Direct allows us to do, any sort of logo on pretty much anything, but we concentrate mostly on like T-shirts, hoodies, bags, water bottles, stuff like that.
Yeah, I love those types of efforts. And so when you, so CTO, like your day to day, what do you do in terms of, helping the company run?
So a lot of it is just answering lots of technical questions from, sales reps, We have a lot of outside sales reps helping them go through our technology, managing, just the development pipeline, going, okay, here's some things that I've heard from the sales reps that they're having problems with in our back end, or here's some things that their clients were having problems with the shopping website, and trying to work with the team here and go, all right, we need to figure out how to solve these things because this is pretty viable. So then I do get my hands pretty dirty with the development as well. So
we'll get into that more in a minute. So when it comes to these websites with the fundraising and everything, if somebody wanted to get involved into with one of those, what would they do, or what who are you looking for to be more involved and participate in those things?
Yeah, so our target sort of sales audience is usually a PTA or PTO of a school. That's usually where all the fundraisers run through. They are pretty good at organizing all those. If you have kids, you get ones at the beginning of the school year, back to back to back, and that's really the biggest season. But if you just go to believekids.com, you can look through the fundraisers, any sort of ideas that we have, and you can just click the request info button, and then we'll get in touch with you and walk you through. It takes about 3 minutes really to walk you through sort of the highlight of the programs. So
do you find that some schools are more successful than others? Like, there's different types of schools, right? There's private schools, there's religious private schools, there's charter schools, there's public schools. Does it really matter?
It doesn't matter so much the type of school as much as sort of the type of programs they run and how involved the sponsor is, right? So that sponsor who really kicks off those programs, if they're pushing out communications and they're emailing and texting or communicating with parents, sending home stuff during the 10-day sale, then those schools are really the most successful.
Yeah. And for people to get involved, it's believekids.com, and the other one is Spirit what?
SpiritGearDirect.com.
SpiritGearDirect.com. We'll get that in the notes. So
I was going to say real quick too. I think it's pretty cool. Where I work, One Hope, we're a ministry that serves kids all over the world. So kind of cool to be on here with somebody else that has a organization that works with kids and stuff too. So that's pretty neat.
Very good.
That's part of the reason he's one of our first guests. Like with kind of the mission of what we do. We want to improve people's lives, right? And that's exactly what Matt's doing. So that's. It's no accident that you're one of our first guests on this reboot of the Hangout.
Very good.
So when we get to some of the other things, you mentioned you do development. So when did you start developing, and what was it? Like it doesn't have to be necessarily a product, but did you start in .NET? Like, how does that look?
I started developing in 1994 with QBasic.
Wow.
I was in middle school, and we had some early computers. My dad was always into technology. He was a director, a TV director at Channel 9 News here in Denver. He did that for about 20 years. And so I always had technology around when I was a kid. And we had some of the earliest computers. And at the time, those computers came with, programming books, like manuals. And so I went from basic to just toying around with that to like QBasic, and doing some simple programs, and I just continued on. I went to college at CU Denver and studied some computer science, and then I had a job concurrent with high school my senior year, and was doing C++ there. The company was called Visual Electronics, pulled data off of phone switches to display them on LED boards. And that was my first sort of professional programming gig.
Wow. I don't even think I could find a link to QBasic to put in the show notes. Maybe in Wikipedia, archive.org.
Maybe WebArch. I've done it. Yeah. I mean, I remember like this QBasic book that I got, and it was sort of around how to do some graphics and games with it. And one of the activities you could do was program a screensaver, and the screensaver was pigs flying across the screen.
Nice. It's better than the infamous, was it the toasters that used to fly or something like that?
This is the flying pigs.
Yeah. Wow. You know, I often anticipate the answer to a question. I did not anticipate any of that. So we'll get to your your specific open source projects later, but so right now we're going to keep things higher level. You know, do you recall when you first found DNN and kind of how you felt about it and how you found it?
Yeah, so I started actually using .NET sort of in the beta before version 1 ever came out. Then version 1 came out, and I think right around 1.1, I saw the iBuySpy portal. Because at the time I worked for a multimedia company, and we cranked out a ton of sites. And I was looking for things to easily crank out these sites. And I didn't use it at the time, but I did take some ideas from it, and we rolled some of our own things. And then in late 2014, I Believe Kids, they had an older site, and we were starting to really look at redoing that. And one of the guys that was on the team said, "Oh, well, let's use a CMS because I have to do so many content updates for these guys, and this is really crazy. I shouldn't be involved in that." And so we evaluated quite a few CMSs, and he had worked with DNN, and he was like, "Well, let's just use DNN." And I was like, "Well, there's some things that we need. We need the load balancing, and we need some workflow and things like that." And so that led us down the path to eventually implementing Evoke. So that's what we use today. And Hotcakes Commerce for our shopping on Shop Believe. And that thing is great too. I mean, so.
I wonder what that is. That's going to Here's your dollar, sir. Yeah, awesome. So, was there anything specific about DNN that really caught the eye? Like, I know you mentioned being able to manage content, but was that the only kind of the biggest reason?
Some of it was sort of the content approval process. The workflows that were in there. But out of all the CMSs we evaluated, it was just the easiest for end users to understand, right? It was pretty much where it was like, once it was up and running, you just saw, okay, here's the page. I'm going to edit this little piece of content on the page, and type it in and save, and they were good to go. So,
yeah, one of my favorite features of DNN too, compared to all the others, is you can edit it right there on the page instead of go somewhere else, some admin area. Yep.
Yeah. So that was the biggest reason.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because not long before we started recording, I was just on a client call, and they were saying the same thing about user experience having transitioned from kind of a Drupal / WordPress environment, and they're like, this just makes sense to me. So definitely, completely agree there. So, the Believe website is using DNN, and you kind of mentioned one of the modules on there. You didn't know, I don't know that you knew I was going to ask the question, but other than Hotcakes Commerce, are you using any other third-party extensions that you feel really excited about mentioning?
I think I use your Open Graph module that you did way back when. Use that for some Facebook stuff, and then other than that, everything else is all custom modules.
So you're saying I need to update that?
Now, I mean, we've sort of forked some of it, but yeah.
We'll get back to the forking later. Good to know. All right. Anyhow, so as far as development, one of the things that people may or may not know about you, if depending on how well plugged in they are, is that you're probably one of the more well-versed people in a client-side technology called React. For those of the people that don't know what React is, first and foremost, could you just explain that to us real quick?
Yeah, so React was developed by Facebook, and they put it out there. That's what they use on their front end. And it is a front end only JavaScript framework, right? So you can develop in TypeScript or what they call ECMAScript, which is the same thing as JavaScript. It's just the standard. And all you can do is front end stuff. So anything back end, you actually have to, fetch and do your calls through API or get them injected into the front end some other way.
So there's other frameworks that allow those types of things to happen. And I promise for people watching, we're not going to dive too far into the technology stuff, so feel free to stick with us and we'll get past some of the words that might be going right over your head. I apologize for that. But when it comes to the choice of React, there's other frameworks out there, right? There's Angular, there's Knockout, there's some others that are up and comers. What made you personally? What was it about React that really attracted you?
So just some of the consistency that it had. I think at the time I started looking, Angular 1 switched to Angular 2. Every single piece of syntax changed. Vue at the time really wasn't out yet. And those were pretty much it. And then it had Facebook behind it. So very large development community. And Dan Abramoff, the guy who runs the React project, is just like this JavaScript wizard. So I know that he's just got all sorts of things in this system. And so it took a little bit for me to get used to some of the syntax and the way it was doing some things, where I know like Vue, JS now that makes a lot more sense to people. If they don't have a big sort of development background, but I just really like the way that you can compose all your React components and throw in all the HTML right in the middle and just keep going.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about React, for somebody who hasn't touched it before, do you have any high-level tips like, hey, make sure you do these 3 things or don't?
I would start off with create React app. That's the easiest way. It's got lots of cool examples on there. And then if you're really going to get into it, I would research something called higher order components. So that's just a way to how you structure your components, where the children don't do so much processing. You let them call back and let the parent do all the processing.
Yeah, so that's almost a segue to my next question. When people are using this, they have the choice these days of JSX and TSX. What are the differences between those?
Yeah, so JSX is just the pure sort of JavaScript. There's no type checking involved. TypeScript is actually developed by Microsoft, and it's really cool. And it enforces types. So if you're used to something like C# or any of the other type languages, you actually declare that this variable is an integer or this variable is a string, where, React infers a lot of that, or JavaScript, JSX refers a lot of that.
And when you're dealing with React, I'm making an assumption here that it's not just DNN that you're dealing with it, but when you're dealing with React, there's a lot of complementary frameworks that sometimes are not necessary, but sometimes absolutely are. Do you have any favorites that you tend to go to?
I tend to stick mostly with just the React and the React DOM. Redux is a big one out there. If you have a really large application where you have a lot of state that you have to manage, it helps a lot. But Redux is not specific to React. You can use that in your Vue projects or any other Node or JavaScript project. I think they actually have a port for Redux that people are working on for .NET as well. So, but I tend to really try to stick with just React, and then component-wise, so I don't have to develop a ton of components. We're using some of the Kendo React components, and that's something that Progress or formerly Telerik has put out. So.
Now, one of the things that I hope I'm not the only one, but it feels like there's a new framework every day, right? And they all have very creative names. I kind of hope that one day between Yarm and Cat and there's like these. I want to one day see these complementary frameworks where they end up forming a sentence, and this is the platform I'm on. But anyway, that's just a little personal thing I have. But what do you find, with all these different platforms going on, and some of them complementing each other, some of them not? How are you personally trying to keep up with all of that?
Oh man, I follow a lot of sort of blogs. So I'll read the React blog a lot. I drop in on Channel 9 for the Microsoft stuff a ton. I get emails, going, hey, look at this virtual, conference or this webinar. But a lot of the times it'll just be driven off of a business need. So we'll say, oh, we have to do this. Like for instance, one of the initiatives we're doing here is moving our web APIs to .NET Core. So we go, okay, well, let's figure some of this out. And then you go, okay, well, we need some authentication. So how do I do authentication in .NET Core? And then you jump down the sort of JWT rabbit hole, and then you get into middleware and all this. So you slowly discover as I'm implementing, I think.
So two things with that, I often describe development to people like plumbing. You know where the pipe ends up, and if you're looking for a clog or something to fix it, that you just follow the pipe, right? like debugging. You know you're going to end up at that clog eventually, right? But the other thing is, and I promise everybody's listening, we did not rehearse this. That was a great segue to my next question. So you've been dabbling in .NET Core and Standard, we're in some similar groups, and so I've been seeing some of the things you've been doing, obviously. What about .NET Core excites you?
Speed. Just the actual performance improvement you get. And it's not only just going from .NET Framework to .NET Core, like the speed improvements you get, but going from versions of .NET Core, from 1.1 to 2 to 2.2 to 3, just the speed improvements you get there too. I also like that it runs anywhere, right? Within reason. I mean, there are exceptions to that, but I do a lot of development on Mac, and so a lot of the stuff we do, I'll do on my Mac, and I like that I can host some of this stuff on Linux now, because that puts my cloud hosting costs down. So
I'm definitely coming back to the Mac thing. So we have a topic that's been recurring ever since .NET Core and Standard became a conversation piece, right? And eventually, we probably, as a community and a product and an ecosystem, will be moving from .NET Web Forms to .NET Core. So we have a lot of talks about that. We're not, there's a lot of ways we can get there, obviously. What are your thoughts about the current direction and how you feel like we might get there?
I think that to get there, there's going to be some people that have to rewrite a lot of things. It's just an inevitable thing. I think the direction we're going is good. Introducing some patterns that allow people to develop Razor pages or things like that in DNN, so that they can rewrite some of their web forms in a very familiar pattern, but then be able to move that to .NET Standard and then .NET Core later on. I think that we have to sort of split the front end and the back end of things.
Yes.
In my opinion, I think the back end can all run on .NET Core. I think the front end needs to be a front end framework, like Vue, React, or Angular, whatever it is. But that'll allow people to go even implement their own front ends where you don't have necessarily the overhead of, a DNN admin module or something like that, where you just go, okay, I don't even need a regular DNN front end. I know where my data goes. We're a pretty technical team. I'll push everything through the API back into the database and retrieve it, and then I'll do my own site, so there's that too.
Yeah, I'm excited about that prospect as well. The whole headless CMS thing. Hey, Ralph, if you could choose any framework for the front end, what would you choose?
Vue. That's what I've been using. Vue.js.
What about Vue?
Use that. What's that?
What about Vue? Is it that you like about that?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things I like is it seems like because it's one of the later frameworks, it's had a chance to learn from some of the other frameworks that have been out there. And so, it's kind of taking a lot of the strengths of React, but, kind of like Matt said a little earlier, kind of simplifies some things, makes it easier to kind of follow along with what's going on. And, but I lost a lot of confidence in Angular when they first made that big shift and everything like that. So for me, I was happy to just get on one framework. I've been bouncing around between all the different frameworks, and now I can settle in on Vue. But there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's another one of those just top contenders at this point. But it's pretty simple to use. So
yeah, I'd say Vue would probably be a pretty good choice because it has just an easier level of understanding. It doesn't take such a steep learning curve like React did.
Right. Yep.
And on top of that, some of the things we should be looking at is sort of a web components type thing. So where we can have some components, but then those web components can be used anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
That's a whole nother can of worms that we're not going to get into in this episode. But so Ralph, you have that LMS module that somehow beat my CodeCamp module in that contest. That was written in Angular 1, I think. So are you going to be upgrading that to Vue?
There's a good chance of that someday will happen.
All right.
I'd love to be able to port that over to Vue. Yes.
So DNN 3 technically got released today. By the time people are seeing this video, I don't know what the actual word is going to be on that. But anyhow, DNN 3 just came out. And one of the things that is huge with DNN 3 is that there's been a ton of improvements to the persona bar. And we have Mr. Matt Rutledge to thank for a lot of that. So what did you do in terms of contributing to the 9.3 release, Matt?
Oh man. Well, what we found out, as a community when we got to take over a lot of the projects again, was that sort of the React and JavaScript side of things were way out of date. And if you use these JavaScript frameworks, I mean, there's releases that happen every month, every week in some cases. And so you got to really keep up on it. And so they were really out of date. So I updated all the versions for everything, and it broke a lot of things. And we had to go back and fix a ton of things. And then we took sort of the React common components that the persona bar was using and completely restructured that project. So before there were some interdependencies between components, but they were all separate packages. And so we just made it go, hey, it's just one package of components instead of each component being its own sort of individual thing you had to download.
Wait, when you say components, are you talking about the individual views that are in the persona bar itself?
Yes, well, the individual sort of React components themselves. So like
the actual components.
Like a file upload component and the like a tag component, like the individual ones there.
And one of the things that was also implemented was something called Greenkeeper. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Greenkeeper is an interesting project. What they'll do is they'll monitor your GitHub repository, and they'll look at all your package files, and they'll go out and check and see, are there updates for these packages? And if there are, it will do an update and then submit a pull request back to your project. So then you can actually go in, and if you have a lot of tests involved, the pull request build would fail if those tests failed. If you don't, then you should probably check that branch out and check to see, what it breaks, if it breaks anything, and if not, go ahead and merge it in. And sort of it tries to manage all those JavaScript updates for you.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's a very big convenience. Now one of the things about Persona Bar, the Persona Bar, okay, I'm missing a word there. I'm a professional. Is that it's also extensible like the rest of DNN, and so some folks have built extensions for it, and you don't have to use React. You can use Angular. You can use whatever, and you can even, there's in some cases, some people are just using straight up HTML to present something. In terms of Persona Bar development, do you have any tips for anybody that's getting started, Matt?
Yeah, I would say usually what I tell people is that if you can get down to just pure HTML and JavaScript, that's all the Persona Bar cares about. So it doesn't matter what you use. If you use React or Vue or Angular, all these have, sort of a compile process, and they compile down to HTML files and JavaScript files. And so if you can get there, you can put it in the Persona Bar.
Excellent, excellent. Now, you mentioned this earlier. You tend to choose to develop on your Mac.
Yes.
Why have you chose to do this?
Well, because a lot of what I develop is, web stuff. And there's a lot of our users that are sales reps that use Mac. And I need to see how things sort of lay out that way, how they present in different browsers on the Mac versus Windows. I know there are some tools out there like, Browser Stack and things like that let you do some of it. But I just find it easier. I do run parallel, so I run a Windows virtual machine on my Mac to do anything that I can't do on my Mac. But in general, Mac just sort of gets out of the way, right? The OS itself gets out of the way, where, Windows I've always got to do something with.
Fair enough. I can only speak well to one of those. When it comes to anybody else who might be interested in kind of being more Mac centric in terms of .NET development, do you have any pros and cons or tips that you'd like to give to them?
Yeah, use VS Code, or if you're doing something maybe a little more complex that is just sort of .NET Core specific, use the Visual Studio Community Edition or Visual Studio Edition for the Mac, because those have all the same templates and stuff that you'd be familiar with on Windows. If you're doing any sort of TypeScript or JSX development, use Visual Studio Code, because the plugins and the way that it does all the IntelliSense and things are way better than what's in the full Visual Studio IDE, which is funny to me. But
well, there's a lot more extensibility in terms of there's been a lot more exposure to other communities that have adopted Visual Studio Code, so there's been a lot more, I guess, involvement, right? So it makes sense that, unfortunately, it makes sense that that's the case. So this brings me up to one of the things that, so it's kind of weird. So I released something recently. It's a fork upon your project I'm about to bring up. And it was weird because some of the comments I got, mostly private, were like, I didn't even know Matt did this. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, he's been on Southern Fried DNN, you know, he's in, like most of us have been tweeting about it. We're like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. But they're like, I didn't know he did this. So you build a tool, you maintain a tool called Generator-DNN. Can you tell us what, like, we don't have to go in great detail because on the show notes I'm going to put your Southern Fried presentation and everything. But can you tell people what this is?
Yeah, so it just helps you get started developing a DNN module project. Like, you go to the command line, you say, yo DNN, which is sort of cool. And it asks you some questions, and then it builds out a project structure for you. You can either keep with that structure or you can modify it as you see fit. It just gives you a starting point. But it sort of takes care of all the setup stuff that you probably don't really care about or really honestly don't even need to know. Mm-hmm. You know, so for new developers getting into DNN module development or anything like that, it is just super quick. Like, you can literally get a module up and running in less than 2 minutes.
So the time frame is really, really important to me because when I discovered this, I had no idea, right? I had no idea you had it out there, no clue. And there was a Visual Studio, or still is, there's a Visual Studio, a template engine that I'm not going to mention the name of, that I was trying to like do something for a quick proof of concept that like it was all of a sudden locked up Visual Studio, and that's not typical of this tool, so I don't want to say that, but it locked it up, and I'm like, what's going on here? Like, this usually just goes quickly. And then somebody says, why don't you use Generator-DNN? I was like, what are you talking about? So I go there, go find Generator-DNN, and it had a couple of prerequisites. I have to install Node and some other stuff. And the time it took for me to read through, figure out how to install all the dependencies, and then finally install and figure out how Generator-DNN worked, and the time it took me all that, the other thing still wasn't done. Right? I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so, like, there's been a lot of generators in the past, and I mentioned this in a blog recently, but there's been a lot of generators in the past, but this is the first time where a generator just made sense to me. Like, all the ones in the past, I was just kind of like, I like this, don't like that, whatever. So it was really inspiring what you did and the work you put into it. And so I want to, on behalf of the entire community, thank you for doing that. What is in the future of Generator-DNN?
I was going to say real quick, Will, that as a front-end guy that has built a module that beat yours.
An award-winning module.
An award-winning module.
And by the way, thanks, Will, for helping me answer some questions. But as a front-end guy, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of. It was pretty challenging to try to figure out what I needed to do to get into a place where I can just start developing my module. I mean, I knew a little bit of C#, but I was mostly wanting to do it all in Angular, and I basically learning enough C# to be able to get the, connect to the API and that type of thing. But it was challenging. But I played around with the Generator-DNN, and it was just, I mean, it was a lot smoother, and it made me really wish I had that years ago when I was working on the other stuff. So, I as a front end guy, I appreciate any of those kind of tools that kind of remove some of that stuff that, just makes it hard to even get your foot into to start dabbling. So yeah, I appreciate that too, personally.
Now, following kind of like the theme that we've just been on, one of the focuses of your implementation of the templates is it empowers you to not necessarily need Visual Studio, right? Like, you can build and package without it, right? Can you tell us just a few tidbits about that?
Yeah, so Node.js is really good at handling memory streams and doing things really fast. And so everything that you use to run this, for packaging the module or even building the module, runs through sort of the Node.js sort of processor, if you will, right? So you call a command through your package manager, prefer Yarn, So you can say like yarn package, and that kicks off everything. And so that'll take all your module and build your installer, and then you can install that on a DNN instance. So some of the templates that I worked out with, like the React SPA template, mostly allows you to completely develop on your Mac, have all the hot reloading. So as soon as you change something in your React, you immediately see it inside a DNN site, and you can run that on your Mac or Windows. And I use a tool called, browser.io. And that allows me to sort of do some middleware magic and load my React stuff into any URL, right? So in my case, I run DNN on my Windows virtual machine. And so it's like dnn.dev.me, or dnndev.me is the URL. So I point my my browser IO config to that URL. It loads it from my Windows machine, but serves everything from my Mac when it's in a particular view. So it allows you to get that really rapid feedback that a lot of front-end developers are really used to. You know, anyone that's developed sort of outside of the .NET world is used to a lot of these command lines and interfaces, and just getting sort of rapid feedback. As soon as they type something, boom, it's there on the screen and they see it. They're developing a split screen, and they can do some pretty cool stuff with it. So like if you install Create React App, or I think even some of the Vue stuff, you go yarn start, and that starts your entire application. And then you just start cranking out some code, and the screen over here is just refreshing. And so I really try to get to that point with the SPA modules with the generator. So you didn't need to even know how to set any of that up, but we do it in the background for you.
Nice. And this is obviously an open source effort. Are you looking for help? And we'll put the GitHub link in the show notes. Are you looking for help? Do you have like issues open where it's like help wanted, anything like that?
Yeah, there are some issues. There are some ones that help wanted. In the future, I want to add some more templates to this thing. Right now, it's pretty focused on sort of MVCs there, and then React, and the persona bar is there, but it's also React focused. So if I can get some help on, adding an Angular template or a Vue template, that'll help a lot of people out. And just some of the building, right? One of the things that we're having a conversation on was like, oh, I want to use just the .NET command line to build everything. But the tool focuses, makes me use this yarn command to kick everything off. So some of it's just, oh, how do I make it so you could use either, right?
Yeah, so transitioning now, you've been on Southern Fried DNN twice, and one of the times you talked about performance in DNN, and you also had talked about performance in DNN in a DNN Corp webinar. There's been a little bit of time between now and then. Are there any fresh tips that you might want to give people about those some of the things you've mentioned in the past?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them really haven't changed. It's make sure you're using, high on your memory cache. Make sure you're actually caching pages. But with the ability to do a SPA module, right? I would say use SPA modules because all that processing, as soon as that file is downloaded, all that processing happens on the client side. And if you can just get the little chunks of data from an API, which DNN supports doing web API style calls, as even a module type, your site performance goes up. I think in Hotcakes, one of the things I did for Believe Kids we send out a catalog, and people are browsing this catalog, and there's item codes in it. Well, instead of clicking around on all the site, they can text a number. They could text pay to 555-888. They get a link. They click a link, and it takes them to a page and says, hey, who are you supporting? They select the school they're supporting, and then they can type in the item codes from their phone. And that's all done in React. And so as soon as they type in an item code, I know how to validate it because I know all the products that are on the site already. So as they're typing, it's validating the code. So we make sure that they're entering the correct code. And as soon as they hit OK, we show like what's in their order, and we'll pull up the thumbnail of the product and the description and the price, and then a subtotal. And then they can just say place order at the bottom of that page. And then it allows them to pay with their credit card. So we've taken people sort of from a paper world and moved them online. But they still have that physical copy of something that they're looking at.
That is very, very cool. Well, the last couple of questions I have for you is something I'm toying with asking everybody. So the first one, this is quick fire, all right? Because we're moving on to news, and then we got to put Ralph on the spot. So Ralph, make sure you hit refresh. All right. So DNN future. If you had one thing that you could just wish for in any area of DNN, it doesn't have to be the product itself, and it would instantly appear, what would that be? Think Will Smith in the new Aladdin.
A .NET Core implementation. That would be my one thing.
Kind of figured you would say that. All right. Okay, our community, it's traditionally it's close to 1 million strong, right? We have hundreds of thousands of people that definitely build on DNN every day, whether they're developers or other types of people, right? Anybody that is part of this ecosystem, part of this community that is, they would like to help in some way and they currently can't, what would you say to them? Or they don't know where to start?
I would say just get on GitHub, go to the DNN site, and there's lots of things. There's lots of things in that repo that you can do. And if you're not technical, look at contributing to the documents, right, for the new DNN docs. But really, if everything that's related to DNN, when you get on GitHub, if you put in DNN, a whole bunch of stuff will come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that he's mentioning are extensions out there, and even they need documentation, right? Like there's no single project out there that's be like, hold up a second, don't document this for me.
That's right. Yeah, if somebody wants to document the generator, that'd be great too.
Documentation, testing, just install them somewhere, click around, tell somebody what's wrong. Yeah, all that stuff. Excellent. Last question. What about DNN continues to energize you?
The community. It's got to be the community. I go to the DNN Summit event. I've been for like the past 3 years. Each year I get more involved. Each year I meet more people, and it's just, building a network. I have some questions. I can get on one of the groups and I can ask. Everyone's always very welcoming. It's great.
So once again, great segue. So the next section, DNN Summit just ended not long ago, roughly a month ago. Yeah, almost a month ago. Sessions are getting posted soon, so do be looking out for a newsletter if you went or if you're on the newsletter list. Trainees, if you were in training, make sure you check your Slack channels because there might be a trainer that's trying to get a hold of you. And then the next year, the next event for DNN Summit is going from mile high to below sea level. So it's going to be in Florida next year, so keep your ears to the ground on that. And then the next major DNN event is DNN Connect, of course. It's going to be, and I'm probably not going to say this correctly, so I'm sorry, I'm American, Champray, Switzerland. It's going to be June 6th to 9th. I know I'm going. Ralph, you're probably not going, right?
I'm not gonna
Matt, are you going to be finding your way out there? Maybe doing a vacation in Switzerland?
I am trying to figure out how to do it. You know, I'm trying to figure out how to take the wife and kids. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm telling people. Like,
I'm waiting for Upendo
days before and after to go. What's that, Ralph?
I'm waiting for Upendo Ventures to sponsor me to be able to go.
Yeah. So on that note, book your travel as soon as possible. I use an app called Hopper to look for like deals with travel, and so the event itself is not that expensive, right? But the flights in are pretty expensive from the U.S. So I have like all the area airports. I have them all in my Hopper, waiting to get a good price. And then what I'm probably going to do is either once I get there, fly in from that particular airport using another airline, or take a train in. So I'm going to do one of those things, I think. So I'm probably not going to land in Switzerland, but I'm going to end up there. And if anybody wants to give me a ride from another place, like, feel free to hit me up. Later on today, in an hour or two after this broadcast, Southern Fried DNN has a user group meeting today, but that doesn't mean anything to you if you're watching this right now. But Southern Fried DNN, I think it's .org, right? Or anyway, Google Southern Fried DNN, you'll find their latest episode. TADUG, the Toronto Area DNN User Group, continues to have meetings, so thank you for that, Adderson. And .NET Foundation, the candidate submissions have closed. So if .NET Foundation, that's DNN's part of that now. We have two of our very own that are candidates. Mr. Sean Walker, you may have heard of him. He could have created DNN originally. So he's one of the candidates you can choose from, as well as Mitch Sellers, who leads our technology group. So voting is going through the end of March, but you do need to join the .NET Foundation in order to vote. So I'm very proud to say I have joined that. Matt, have you joined the .NET Foundation? Putting you on the spot.
Well, since I've contributed to the open source projects, I've signed some of those CLAs or something. But I've not filled out the membership application now.
Yeah. All right. And our very own Andrew Heffling has also generated some interviews with some of the folks that were at DNN, MVP Summit. So, yeah. Now, Mr. Ralph, are you ready?
I am.
Are you ready for your spot? All right. So, real quick, in less than 5 minutes, this is a new segment. And folks that are watching, if you want to suggest something to put Ralph on the spot here, what I'd like to do is I'm just sending him a link to an extension out there, and I just want him to, he's going to be sharing a screen, just want his first impressions on it, build something real quick, anything at all, right? Just figure out how to use it. And so, today's, and go ahead and start share, well, here, I'll just send it to you right now, and then you can click on it and start sharing your screen. Oops, nope, how did I copy that? Hold on a second. There we go. All right, just paste it in. All right, show your screen, sir.
All right, let me get to the link here. Nope, make sure it's in the wrong place and all that kind of good stuff before I start sharing. All right.
Uh-oh, what was he doing?
He was riveted by my responses to your questions.
He's starstruck. He's like, you built something to help me build something. So what do we got here? What is this?
It's like we have open content.
Open content. Yes, this is something I like to use for structured content. So continue, sir.
Okay. Now I have used this one once, so
okay.
I do have a little bit of use for it. But so go in here, download it, pick the
that's
install.
a beta. How about we not do the beta just in case?
No, come on.
Yeah, just in case. That wouldn't be a fair assessment of any module.
All right. Now I have my site. I'll log in there.
We need sound effects. I might put sound effects after this.
Trying to make sure I don't grab the beta.
Yeah. All right. So it's just a standard install so far. going through the install wizard. And Mr. Sasha, thank you for creating this module. He's also an MVP, just like Matt. Okay, the install's great. Perfect. Now we have to wait for DNN to tell us that we have a slow connection.
Local, All right. So I guess I will create a new page then.
Okay.
So.
And by the way, folks that are watching this, if you're non-technical, you can do this with any module and then create issues to test it. All right, so we're creating a page.
Whoops. That always changes order for me, it seems like.
All right, we have a new page.
Yep. All right, let's see. Open content. There it is right there. All right. Put that on there. Okay, so here have some choices to make when adding a new module. The source of content, thankfully, because I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this, I can only choose one thing. So, I mean, having used this, though, I do know that if you put another module on another page, you can connect the data source for those two modules. And because there's only one module on the site, there are no other modules to choose from. So I think you kind of give me a precursor to this, Will, of what you're wanting. You're hoping for some maybe UX feedback and that type of stuff. So I think dropping it onto the page would be nice.
In the nicest of ways.
What's that?
In the nicest of ways, of course.
Yes. I think it'd be helpful if there's just some sort of a description, instructions of kind of, what you want to do and what those choices you make, how they impact what you do. So the first three, like I said, it's kind of nice that they're I don't have any choices since I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with that. But so I go in here and I can see I want to create a new template, and based on a template from openextensions.net, and from my understanding, you can go there and find more possibly, or at least some descriptions of what these different templates are. So looking on here, there's a lot of different types of templates to use. I'd be tempted to use the view starter, but because I don't feel like typing view, going on with the view right now, I'm going to pick something with Bootstrap that seems to be something that would be easy to use. So we'll go with a Bootstrap accordion, and we'll call it spell it the right way, right? I don't know. I always forget. But it's accordion. I see. All right. So now I've created my template, and I'm going to edit some content. And I'm very creative in my naming.
Test module.
Test module. Yes. All right. So so here I'm creating a column. It'd be kind of nice to have a little bit of a description on what a column means. I mean, if I'm thinking data centric, I kind of think about what a column would be. That kind of makes sense. All right. Well, this is creating a column for data, but it'd be nice to maybe have a little bit friendlier name that explains a little bit more of what this is going to be. But because this is going to, like I said, if I think about a data table and the different columns, I'll start off with a name, and the user's name.
I love the lightweight HTML editor they have there.
Oh, that is nice. Yeah. Save that. And now I have this here, which is a little bit confusing because I'm not really sure what's going on with it. There's a name there, and then there's the user's name, the description. So Oh, it's the accordion, so it opens and closes.
Ah.
So that's kind of nice, but that's not what I was thinking it was going to be. So we go in here, I'm going to edit content, and I see another option for adding something new. Oh, another column. So I'll put this as, let's see.
It's almost titled funny, isn't it? Like instead of a column, it's like accordion.
Yeah, it seems like
accordion 2 something.
Yeah, so for those of you that are watching, this sounds like a great pull request.
All right, so I'm going to save that. So now I have a working accordion, but I did notice something when I was in here.
This might be good for something like FAQs or something, huh?
Yeah, that'd be good for that. One thing that I did notice in here that kind of piques my interest is this edit raw data. Kind of want to see what that looks like. So if you go in there, see, this makes me happy. As a JavaScript developer, and I'm seeing JavaScript, and it makes me happy. Or
I remember a day when nobody would have said that.
Yeah. So now that I see this, okay, well, I see panels is the array. So it looks like you mentioned, maybe there's FAQs. So the title, which it said column instead of panels, but so the title for this first one, we can say DNN history, and then change this one to be DNN now, and then DNN tomorrow. And to keep consistent, we'll go yesterday. And what will come for the future of DNN when it is on .NET Core. And we'll save and close. And so now we have that. So that part's pretty cool. I think that's pretty neat. So one other thing,
notice how fast it is. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty nice and quick. So one thing I want to try is, because I mentioned earlier the whole sharing of content, kind of curious to see how that works. I'm going to put this over here, and I'm going to say I want to use the source of the content will be from another module. Oh, and there's my test page. So that's interesting. It's pulling from so it shows the name and the name of the module that I created. So that's what I want to choose from there. I'm going to use an existing template, which is interesting because I can't create a new template. I can only use one. So I'm wondering if I can only use, if I'm using source from a template, maybe I can only use the templates. If I'm only using the source from a module, maybe I can only use their templates. I don't know. That would be nice to have a little bit of kind of description around why I can't create a new template here. That's just my assumption.
What's in the drop down there? Are there more templates than just your own? Just the one?
Just the one that I created. Yep. And so I hit save. Oh, there we go. So let me move this one over here so that they're side by side. So now I'm kind of wondering if I go in here to, now how do I create a new template? I guess is the question. There's switch template. So, here we go, create a new template. I can create it off of web extensions or any of the ones that I had. I'm going to go with Bootstrap 3 tabs, and save that.
Seems like an extra save is always required.
Yeah. Oh, I'm hitting save a bunch.
Maybe refresh the page. Maybe that's just some weird thing.
Oh, there's a setting I needed to pick in here.
Oh, okay.
Or tab. So I'll go with tab. Save and close. And I don't see anything. Let me refresh. Continue. I don't know.
So in this particular case, the data might be associated with the template.
Possible. Yeah. Oh, getting an error. Template already exists, so I can't create a new template. Oh, I want to use an existing. That was why. I'm going to switch over here to the accordion. So that works again. So it would be nice to have a little bit more in-module help. And now I know I've gone to the site, and there's some documentation there in the site for this, and this is one of those modules I feel like has a lot of hidden power. And I used it. Actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to show you where I used it.
I don't mind at all.
So I did this site for the school that my kids go to and my wife teach at. And at the bottom, there is this thing down here that has the different faculty. Oh, look.
I wonder why you're showing this.
I don't know. So,
why does that lady have your last name?
So this is a template that has a slider right there. But if we go to the faculty page, then we look at this one here, then we've got a different template, but it's all the same source. And so as we go in here, oh, see, there she is. So I thought this was pretty nice to be able to have, the same, fairly simple. So once I got into it, and it's been I don't know, maybe 10 months since I built this site, and so I've kind of forgotten a bit about how the how it works, and so but like I said, it's hidden power in there. Once you learn how to do the templates, create the I really liked having the JSON there for the data, because then I could just get all of the faculty's information and just put it all in there at once as one big data object, and then save it. And so that was really nice. Yep.
So we're past the 5 minutes. We're gonna have to wrap up the show. Thank you very much, Ralph. And you're actually very, very correct in terms of the power. There's and there is a ton of power in that module. I've used it as well. And not all the templates are JSON driven. Some of them are data driven, like traditional database backend. But it is super, super powerful once you dive into it. And the documentation is actually quite good. And there's some folks that are in GitHub, like if you're creating issues, they're pretty responsive too. So that's starting to be one of my more favorite modules. So it's good to see that you had a good experience with it. If anybody else wants to see us look at any other extensions out there, please feel free to let us know. Don't let Ralph know. Like, the whole point is for him to be surprised and just use it fresh, okay? Let me know, and we'll put it in a future episode. And if you have any nominations for speakers, feel free to let us know that as well. Do you gentlemen have any last second comments before we end the show?
I'm just glad that since that was the first time we've done it, I at least had a little bit of familiarity with it.
Yeah. Cool.
Thanks for having me. Been fun.
Well, thank you for everything you've done, Matt. I really appreciate it. Your hard work has definitely not gone unnoticed, Mr. MVP, and we very much appreciate it. You're one of the many reasons DNN over the last 2 years has been having a resurgence. So thank you very much for your efforts. And if you are watching this show, I look forward to the next one. We have quite a few guests lined up, and we'll be announcing those things shortly. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.